O'Toole and the Goose. O'Toole in his youth was the finest of kings, a leader, a sportsman, a grasper of rings. His reign, mostly peaceful, saw plenty for all, and the king was resourceful when backed to the wall. If neighbours infringed without being asked, he and his army would bring them to task. And if times got too lean and larders were bare, he wasn't above a little warfare. Look after your own was the motto back then, and in that regard he was like other men. Physical man who liked physical play. Nothing relaxed him like spending the day hunting on horseback or playing handball or dancing to fiddles in the great dancing hall. For years he continued in the rudest of health. Being fit, he contended, is the only true wealth. I don't have to tell you what's about to befall the king. He grew older. It happens us all. His eyes, once as clear as a bright mountain spring, grew dimmer. In order to read anything, he held it as far from his nose as he could. In the end, even that was no profit or good. My eyes are just fine, he was heard to retort. It's just that my arms are too bloody short. And his hearing, alas, had faded as well. Conversation was parlous, as many can tell. So great King O'Toole grew despondent and glum. For a king has few friends, and though he had some, the truth of the matter, I'm sorry to say, is that, just like the king, they were tired and grey. What I need is some youth, some vigour, some life, he complained to his long-suffering, good-natured wife. She, a wise woman, thought for a while, and turned to O'Toole and said with a smile, "What you need, husband mine, is a pet of some kind." "A pet?" he inquired. "You have something in mind?" His wife gave a shrug. "Whatever you choose." That's how he acquired a feathery goose. A goose for a pet, it's odd, I'll admit, but it turns out a goose was a most perfect fit. While she walked on the ground, her ponderous gait matched that of the king. There was no need to wait for the goose to catch up, or either the king. They dothered together. But the very best thing beyond all compare was when the goose of O'Toole would take to the air. She could soar like a swallow or glide like a gull, though that, I'll admit, could get a bit dull. But where she excelled, to the wonder of all, was in wild aerobatics and daring free fall, baranis and somersaults, great twists and spins, the deftest of motions with a tip of the wings. 'Twas joyous, magnificent, a fine thing to see, the goose of O'Toole soaring splendid and free. And O'Toole was delighted and loved his new friend. But they say that all good things must come to an end. It happens, my friends. It happened to you. The goose of O'Toole, well, she grew old too. Her aerial magic lost some of its shine as her general condition went into decline, and slowly but surely, it took a few years, she slowed and grew weary. And then it appears that one day she took quite a serious fall. By the end of that year, she could not fly at all. And so the old king and his friend, the old goose, spent their days sitting under an ancient blue spruce. It gave shade in the summer and shelter from rain, from the chill snows of winter that whitened the plain. A fine noble tree spreading wide o'er the ground, under whose limbs most days could be found the king and the goose taking a nap, the goose with her head laying in the king's lap. Then one day near Christmas a figure appeared, in a shabby brown habit with a straggly beard, like an El Greco painting, monastically lean, strong, sure-footed, calm and serene. He paced through the snow as it blew wild and free to find him some shelter under the tree, where the king and the goose lay dozing away in peaceful repose at the end of the day. Saint Kevin it was, that saint of renown, a pillar of piety, solid and sound. "Good morrow, O'Toole," said the saint with a smile. "Do you mind if I share in your shelter a while?" The king and the goose both awoke with a start. "Oh my God," says the king, "my poor ancient heart. Don't go sneaking around like a thief in the night. Maravashkart, you gave me a terrible fright." "Don't call me O'Toole. I'm a king, if you please." "I'm the king of the fairies or king of the geese?" asked the saint with an impudent grin. "Must I stand in the snow, or can I come in and partake of the shelter this good tree affords?" "There's nothing to stop you. The tree has no doors," said O'Toole with a sigh. "Come in and sit down. If you can't find a chair, you can sit on the ground." "There's plenty good doors and chairs in this tree," said the saint. "They're just waiting to be. And someday perhaps some maker will find this tree and transform it with hand and with mind, just as we too will be changed in our time." And he smiled at O'Toole, but the king looked away, and his hand touched the goose on the ground where she lay. "We change, we grow old. Time makes us weak. My poor goose," he said, as a tear wet his cheek. "'Tis hard for a beast who was free in the air to be brought to the ground and not to be spared the pull and the call of the cold, sullen clay as we bend over towards it closer each day. My poor goose. My poor friend, I'd spare you that fate and have you be young and let heaven wait." "Brave words," said the saint. "All too easy to say. You'd wish with your heart, but what would you pay? I ask you in earnest, so tell me the truth. If I were to restore to this goose its brave youth, if I gave it the wings that it had when it soared higher than heaven, what would you afford? What would you pay for this wish to be true? Would you pay any price that I would name you? I can give it the wings that would fly for a year. Would you give me the ground it flies o'er, free and clear? A strong goose in flight can cover much land. Will you call it a bargain and give me your hand?" "I will," said O'Toole. "I will, and be glad." "Take stock of the price and what's to be had," said the saint. 20 years at the most for the goose, and you have as much as a kingdom to lose. So pause for a moment and tell me again." "I will," said O'Toole. "I will, and amen." "Amen," said the saint. "So let it be." And he carried the goose out onto the snow. Gently he lifted and stroked the white head, and the goose lay as still as if she were dead. And slowly she stretched both her wings left and right, then stood on her feet and reared up and took flight, and soared like an eagle in the afternoon sun, made a great somersault, then dove hard and spun, and flew to horizons north, east and west, as the glory of sunset shone on her breast. And O'Toole, full of joy, threw his hands in the air. "My thanks, holy saint, a bargain most fair." And tears wet his face as he looked to the sky to see his old friend as she flew there on high. "So you'll stick by your bargain," said the saint to the king. "Oh yes," said O'Toole, "you may have anything as your payment in kind." "In that case," said the saint, "I hope you don't mind, but there's no price to pay. The bargain we made was only to see what price you'd have paid. I wanted to know that your wishing was clear and born out of love and of motives sincere. Kind of a trick, I'm sorry to say, but it seemed to me that there was no other way. It was not my intention to play fast and loose, but look on the bright side. You've got a new goose. You're a very strange saint, said the good King O'Toole. I know, said St. Kevin, but I'm nobody's fool. And so King O'Toole lived for many years yet in robust good health with his fine feathered pet. St. Kevin, it said, lived for 10 dozen years. And this is just one of the stories one hears, but one of the best I'll gladly adduce is the tale of O'Toole and his refurbished goose.